Good evening. Tonight I'd like to discuss the Book of Shadows. This is probably the most common tool that pagans, witches, and Wiccans possess. Most of us have one. Not all of us call it a Book of Shadows, but most of us have some way of record keeping. This is sometimes called a workbook or a spell book, and the Book of Shadows is traditionally black. This was mainly because black is often considered the most mystical color, but there's no real reason for it to be black. You don't have to use black. Mine happens to be. I have about 6, and this particular one does happen to be black. But you certainly don't have to use black. I have a green one, a red one, a white one, and another black one. So I do have 2 black, but you certainly don't need to use a black one. So today, the Book of Shadows can be anything from a traditional leather-bound tome to a 3-ring binder to pages that can be easily reordered. I like this. Mine's a scrapbook. It has metal posts that you can take out and you can add more to, so I can make it thicker if I want. And I use page protectors, and that allows me to easily reorder pages. I prefer that. Not everybody wants that. Some people want traditional leather-bound tomes that they handwrite in, and that's perfectly valid as well. It has to be something that works for you. Some Wiccans or Pagans might use what some people like to call a disc of shadows. That disc of shadows could be a CD or a DVD or a flash drive or just a set of files on your computer. That works as well. You need to select something that is comfortable for your own use. This can take a lot of experimenting, so expect that you'll use several methods before finding one that works best for you. I know I jumped around a lot. I used books, and then I used CDs, then I used flash drives for a while before eventually settling on the idea that scrapbooks actually worked better for me. You'll probably have a different preference. I like scrapbooks because it allows me a little versatility. So I have printed pages, I have pages that are truly scrapbooking, and then I have pages that are just columns that I found that I enjoy having in my Book of Shadows. So it really depends on what works best for you. This works best for me. The Book of Shadows is typically considered probably the most important tool for witches, pagans, and Wiccans. This is because it allows you to keep track. It's not magical, necessarily, but let's face it, we're not all going to remember every spell we've ever cast. We are not all going to remember every step of every ritual that we performed last year at Beltane. We're not all going to remember every detail of every single god or goddess we might choose to work with. This allows us to keep track of that relevant, important material and to reference it when we need to. It is used to contain magical spells and recipes and rituals that are used by you. Remember, it is personal to you. So, yes, you can buy some published Book of Shadows, but at some point you're going to want to create your own. Things that work for you. That doesn't mean you have to write each spell that goes into this. You can certainly use spells and rituals written by other people. But it is going to be difficult for you to find a Book of Shadows, one single Book of Shadows, that contains everything that you want in one book. So at some point, you're probably going to want to create your own. I like something that I can reorder and change as I grow and change myself. And this particular one, it's a little bit worn. You can see it's a little... There's a little damage. These ones I've had for many, many years. There's the occasional dog hair. These I have had for many, many a year. So these are definitely something you want to consider in whatever form a Book of Shadows works for you. Often the question I get is, are they hereditary? No. So yes, it is true that occasionally a teacher or a parent may leave you their Book of Shadows when they pass or when they stop their practice as they age, but this is not at all common. And even if they do, now I have been lucky enough that my mentor, when he passed away, did leave his Book of Shadows to me. And I am very grateful for that. But it is not my Book of Shadows. These ones are mine, and I have more than one. Mine happen to be color-coded. But I have more than one, and they represent my practice. My practice is not exactly like his. Even though he was my mentor, my practice varies. So therefore my Book of Shadows has to vary. So while you might possess a book that was passed down to you by another practitioner, whether that's a friend or a family member or a mentor, that does not make it your Book of Shadows. Even if you have one, you absolutely should create your own. If you have one that was handed down, you should create your own anyway. Generally, it's not shared with others except perhaps with your mentor or your teacher or your group if you have one. And you might keep more than one. I do. Some Wiccans and Pagans like to keep what they call a Book of Shadows and a Book of Light. The Book of Light tends to be where you keep research and supplementary material, and the Book of Shadows tends to be where you keep your spells and your rituals and your recipes and your practical stuff. That can work really well for some people. I tend to find that annoying. I tend to categorize mine based on my green one, for example, has herbs and herbal recipes. So I like to categorize mine that way. You might just have one big tome, and you also might choose to do separate tomes. That's what I do. I have them separated. I have white is my crystals and green is my herbs, and I keep both practical and research material in them so that everything on herbs is in one. This one is spells and rituals and information pertaining to that. So it really depends on you. I don't like having my research and my practical material separate because I don't like having to grab two books when I am doing one thing. But again, it's entirely up to you. You might disagree with me and you might want to keep all your materials separated by practical and research. You might not want to keep any research material at all. It's entirely up to you. Remember, this is a very unique thing. One interesting practice that I've heard floated around of late is a Tome of Shadows. This is something that you pass down to your children. It's a fun idea. You can gather up the information you have and create a beautiful and unique resource that is particular to your family, if your children even practice. If they don't, it becomes a non-issue, doesn't it? But it's a nice idea, and this is usually done when you're a little bit older. My age, for example. I'm not telling you how old I am. I have gotten to the point where I no longer tell people how old I am. But usually it's 45 or older. You might create a Tome of Shadows that is designed to be passed down to your children. It does not take the place of their own Book of Shadows. It would just be a supplement to it, because a Book of Shadows is unique to you. Alright, so it is a good idea to create one, even if you don't refer to it very often, even if you don't really cast spells or do rituals, which is valid. It is nice to have a place where your research and other materials live. It just makes your life a little bit easier. So, that is the Book of Shadows for you. I'm not going to share what's in mine. I will at some point do some videos where I share what might be in yours. A Book of Shadows is personal, private, and generally not shared with others. Thank you for joining us this week as we discussed the Book of Shadows and its place in Wiccan practice. Blessed be.